The transport shuttle descended toward the massive space station that housed the Galactic Unity Academy. Inside, Kang Minho pressed his face against the window, watching the structure grow larger. It was bigger than anything he had ever seen. The station called Celestial Forge could hold 1 million beings, and right now it held the best warriors from 1,000 different species. Minho was 22 years old and came from Sol District on Earth. He was not tall. He was not muscular. When he walked, his footsteps made almost no sound. When he spoke, people often asked him to repeat himself because his voice was so quiet. He knew what the other cadets would think when they saw him. The shuttle docked. Minho grabbed his single bag and followed the other new arrivals into the station. Around him, beings of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some had 4 arms. Some had scales like armor. Some stood 3 meters tall and their steps shook the metal floor. Minho walked between them like a shadow, unnoticed. The orientation hall was enormous. 500 new cadets filled the space, and the noise was incredible. Different species greeted each other in different ways. Some roared. Some clicked their mandibles. Some released scents that made Minho's eyes water. He found a seat near the back and sat down quietly. Commander Velthrax entered the hall and everyone fell silent. The commander was Crethian, a species built for war. He stood nearly 4 meters tall, covered in natural armor plating that gleamed under the lights. His voice boomed across the hall without any amplification. "You are here because your worlds believe you are warriors," Commander Velthrax said. "Most of you are wrong. This academy will break you. It will test everything you believe about strength, courage, and honor. Only the strongest will graduate. Only the best will serve the galactic unity." The commander's eyes swept across the crowd. "You will introduce yourselves, stand, state your name and species, begin." One by one, the cadets stood. Each introduction was louder than the last. A Gorthian roared his name so loudly that the walls vibrated. A Krillian female demonstrated her combat stance, her blade-like limbs moving faster than Minho could follow. An Erglian named Throknar stood and beat his chest, which sounded like boulders crashing together. Then it was Minho's turn. He stood slowly. Kang Minho, human, from Earth. His voice barely carried past the first row. Several cadets turned to look, confused. Someone in the front shouted, "Speak up, Ghost!" Laughter rippled through the hall. Minho felt his face grow warm, but he did not raise his voice. He simply nodded and sat back down. After orientation, the cadets were assigned to dormitories. Minho carried his bag through corridors filled with the sounds of his new classmates boasting about their combat experience. He found his room and was relieved to discover he would have it to himself. Most species preferred group housing, but humans needed private spaces. The first week of training was brutal. Every morning began with physical conditioning. Minho ran alongside beings who could move twice as fast on their multiple legs. He lifted weights in rooms where Erglians casually handled loads that would crush him. In combat simulations, he faced opponents with natural weapons, natural armor, and reflexes evolved over millions of years for warfare. He finished last in almost everything. Throknar made it his personal mission to remind Minho of this fact. The Erglian was built like living stone, with gray skin that could deflect blade strikes. He was loud, aggressive, and popular among the other warrior species cadets. "Look, the ghost moves." Throknar would boom whenever Minho entered a room. "Can anyone hear him breathing? Maybe he is already dead." The other cadets laughed. Even the instructors seemed disappointed by Minho's performance. Only Instructor Park Dahyun, one of the few other humans on station, watched him with an expression that was not quite pity. One evening after a particularly difficult day, Minho made his way to the observation deck. It was usually empty during meal hours, which was exactly why he chose that time to visit. The deck had massive windows that looked out into space. Minho found Earth in the viewport, a blue and white sphere hanging in the darkness. He sat on the floor and stared at his homeworld. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Minho turned. Another human cadet stood behind him. She was taller than him, with short hair and tired eyes. He recognized her from the Erglian combat course where she had also performed poorly. "I'm Yoon Ji-won," she said, sitting down beside him without waiting for an invitation. "You're the one Throknar calls the ghost." "That's me," Minho said quietly. They sat in silence for a while, both watching Earth. Finally, Ji-won asked the question that had clearly been bothering her. "Why did you come here if you knew they would treat you like this?" Minho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but there was something underneath it that made Ji-won lean closer to hear. My grandfather told me a story once, Minho said. Before humans had technology, before we had ships or stations or energy weapons, we hunted. Do you know how we hunted? Ji-won shook her head. We found an animal, something faster than us, stronger than us, something with claws and teeth that could kill us easily, and we followed it. We didn't run after it. We just walked, step after step, hour after hour. We tracked it so quietly it never knew we were there. When it ran, we followed. When it rested, we got closer. This went on for days sometimes. The animal would run until it couldn't run anymore. It would be so tired and so scared of this thing that never stopped following it, never made a sound, never gave up. And then, when it finally collapsed, we struck. Minho turned to look at Ji-won. That's what humans are. We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest. But we're patient. We're quiet. And we never ever stop. Ji-won stared at him. And you think that matters here? I think, Minho said softly, that every species here believes strength is about being loud, about showing power. They've never met something dangerous that doesn't announce itself. Before Ji-won could respond, the door to the observation deck opened. Throcknar entered with 3 other cadets. They were clearly looking for entertainment. The ghost has a friend, Throcknar boomed. 2 weak humans hiding together. How perfect. Minho stood slowly. He looked up at Throcknar, who towered over him. The Urglian's skin could stop blades. His strength could bend metal. He was everything the galaxy believed a warrior should be. Do you know what quiet means, Throcknar? Minho asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Throcknar leaned down, putting his massive face close to Minho's. It means weak. It means afraid. Minho held his gaze. His voice remained quiet, but everyone in the room leaned forward to hear his next words. No. Quiet means something is listening. Something is watching. Something is waiting for exactly the right moment. He paused. Quiet means you should be very, very careful, because you don't know what's about to happen. For just a second, something flickered across Throcknar's face. Uncertainty, maybe, or the first touch of doubt. Then the moment passed. Throcknar laughed, loud and booming. Big words from a ghost. He turned and left with his group, their footsteps echoing down the corridor. Ji-won stood beside Minho. You know he's going to make your life worse now. Probably, Minho agreed. Was it worth it? Minho looked back at the viewport, at Earth hanging in the darkness. Somewhere down there, humans had spent millions of years learning to hunt in silence, learning to track prey that never saw them coming, learning patience that outlasted anything nature could create. Yes, he said quietly, because someone has to show them what quiet really means. 3 weeks into training, Commander Velthrax announced the first major test. All cadets would spend 1 week on Draken 4, a hostile moon filled with dangerous predators. They would be divided into random teams of 5. Survival and reaching the extraction point would determine their grade. Minho listened to the announcement with quiet acceptance. Around him, other cadets cheered or roared with excitement. Combat was what they understood. Survival was just another form of fighting. The team assignments appeared on the main screen. Minho scanned the list and found his name grouped with 4 others. His heart sank. Throcknar was on his team. So were 3 other aggressive species cadets, a Krillian named Vexic, a Gorthian called Romar, and a Felkari named Scar. They were all bigger, stronger, and louder than him. When the team gathered for the pre-mission briefing, the others made their feelings clear. Great, Throcknar boomed. We get the ghost. He will slow us down. Can we leave him behind? Vexic asked, her blade limbs clicking together. We must bring all team members to extraction, Romar growled. But we do not have to like it. Minho said nothing. He simply checked his basic survival gear and waited for transport. The drop to Draken 4 was rough. The moon's atmosphere was thin but violent. Their shuttle landed in a rocky canyon, and the team disembarked into a landscape of red stone and sparse vegetation. The air smelled like sulfur. In the distance, something howled. Throcknar immediately took command. We move fast. We move loud. We show any predator that we are the dangerous ones here. Follow me. He charged forward, his footsteps echoing off the canyon walls. The others followed, roaring and making aggressive displays. This was how their species survived, by being the biggest threat around. Minho followed at a distance, moving quietly over the rocks. 3 hours into the march, disaster struck. Thruknar was bellowing about their hunting prowess when his voice echoed through a narrow pass. The echo bounced off the walls, amplified, and triggered something. The ground shook. Rocks began falling from above. Landslide! Vexic shrieked. The team scattered in panic. Boulders the size of transport shuttles crashed down. Romar was fast enough to dodge. Vexic jumped to the canyon wall and clung there with her blade limbs. Thruknar covered his head with his massive arms and let the smaller rocks bounce off his stone-like skin. But Scar was not fast enough. The Felkari was directly under a falling boulder, frozen in fear. Minho moved. He did not shout a warning. He simply ran, calculating angles and timing. He hit Scar from the side, both of them rolling clear as the boulder crashed where Scar had been standing. A second later, another rock fell. Minho pulled Scar behind an outcropping, and they both pressed against the wall as debris rained around them. When the dust settled, the team regrouped. Scar stared at Minho with wide eyes. You saved me." Minho nodded but did not speak. Thruknar looked at the blocked pass behind them. "This is a problem. That was our fastest route. And your loud voice caused it," Vexic pointed out. The team made camp that night in a small cave. They argued about the best path forward, each species insisting their approach was correct. The argument grew louder as frustration mounted. Minho slipped away while they were distracted. He moved into the darkness outside the cave, disappearing without a sound. When he returned 4 hours later, the team was in a panic. "Where have you been?" Thruknar demanded. "We thought you were dead." Minho pulled out a rough map he had drawn on a piece of bark. "I scouted the area. There are 3 routes to the extraction point from here." He pointed to different paths he had marked. "This one has water sources. This one has less predator activity. This one is fastest but crosses hunting grounds." "How did you scout all of this in 4 hours?" Romar asked, suspicious. "I moved quietly," Minho said simply. "The predators never knew I was there." Vexic picked up the map. "You crossed the redstone fields? Those are filled with razorbacks. They can smell prey from a kilometer away. They smell aggression and fear," Minho said. "They listen for noise. If you make neither, they do not notice you." Scar spoke up. "He saved my life. I say we trust him." The team followed Minho's map. Over the next 4 days, they made their way toward extraction using the path he had marked. Whenever the team got loud, predators appeared. Whenever Minho suggested they move quietly, they passed through dangerous territory without incident. By the 3rd day, even Thruknar had stopped mocking him. On the final night before extraction, they camped in a sheltered valley. The team sat around a small fire. For the first time, they were not arguing. "I do not understand," Vexic said, looking at Minho. "Your species has no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced senses. How did you survive on your homeworld?" Minho stared into the fire. "We did not survive by being the strongest. We survived by being the most patient." "Explain," Romar rumbled. "Humans are persistence hunters," Minho said quietly. "We tracked animals for days. We were not faster than them, so we just did not stop chasing them. We were not stronger, so we waited until they were tired. We were not louder, so they did not know we were coming until it was too late." "That sounds like coward behavior," Thruknar said, but his voice was not mocking. He sounded genuinely confused. "Does it?" Minho asked. "Tell me, Thruknar, which is braver, to fight an enemy face to face when you are stronger, or to hunt something that can kill you easily, following it for days without rest, knowing one mistake means death?" Thruknar had no answer. "Silence is not weakness," Minho continued. "Silence is strategy. When you roar, you tell everything around you where you are and what you fear. When you are silent, you tell nothing. You become unknown, and the unknown is always frightening." Scar nodded slowly. "The predators on this moon, they did not attack you because they could not understand what you were. Something that makes no sound, shows no fear, just watches and waits. That would be frightening." The team reached extraction the next morning. They were the 3rd team to arrive out of 50 groups. The instructors were surprised to see them, especially surprised that they had lost no members. Commander Vel Thrax reviewed their mission recordings. He watched footage of Minho moving through predator territory like a ghost, watched him save Scar, watched him scout routes that should have been impossible to cross. The commander called Minho to his office that evening. "Cadet Minho," Vel Thrax said, his voice echoing in the small space. "Your performance on Dracon 4 was unusual." "Yes, sir." Your teammates reported that you moved through areas where sensors detected dozens of apex predators. Yet none attacked you, explain. Minho stood at attention. Predators respond to signals, sir. Noise, movement, chemical signatures that indicate fear. I produced none of these signals, how is that possible? Practice, sir. My species spent millions of years learning to be quiet. It is in our nature. Velthrax leaned back in his chair. The metal groaned under his weight. The galactic unity has never encountered a species like yours. We are all loud in our own ways. We announce ourselves. We display power. He paused. You do the opposite. Does that make you weak or strong? Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. I think, Minho said quietly, that the galaxy has forgotten something important. Before there were weapons and ships and technology, there was hunting. And the best hunters were never the loudest ones. After Minho left, Commander Velthrax pulled up information about Earth and humanity. He read about persistence hunting, about humans tracking prey for days across African plains under a burning sun, about humans who could outlast any animal through sheer determination. The commander made a note in Minho's file. This cadet represents something unprecedented. Recommend close observation. Back in his quarters, Minho found a message from Jiwan. Heard you made Throknar respect you. How does it feel? He smiled and typed back, quiet. The emergency alert came at 0300 station time. All cadets were ordered to report to the main briefing hall immediately. Minho dressed quickly and joined the flood of confused students rushing through the corridors. High Admiral Korvesh stood on the stage, his ancient face grave. The hall fell silent as he began to speak. 6 hours ago, our training fleet near the Theta 7 mining colony was attacked. The Zathrun swarm has taken 300 of our people hostage, including 50 instructors and 250 advanced cadets. The hall erupted in angry shouts and war cries. Different species demanded immediate retaliation. The Admiral raised his hand for silence. The Swarm Queen does not negotiate. She consumes. Our military analysis suggests we have 72 hours before she begins feeding on the captives. He paused. Traditional rescue is impossible. The swarm has positioned over 10 million drones around the colony. Any military approach will result in immediate execution of hostages. Minho listened carefully. He knew about the Zathrun swarm from academy briefings. They were a hive mind species. Every drone was connected to the Queen's consciousness. She controlled them all simultaneously through psychic links. They operated through overwhelming numbers and perfect coordination. Commander Velthrax stepped forward. We are considering all options. Orbital bombardment would kill the hostages. A stealth insertion is theoretically possible, but has never succeeded against the swarm. They detect all energy signatures, all communication signals, all movement patterns. Minho raised his hand. The hall went quiet. The ghost was asking to speak. Yes, Cadet Minho, the Admiral said. Minho stood. Sir, the Swarm Queen detects energy and signals because every species in the galaxy uses them. But what if we went in with nothing electronic? No communications, no powered weapons, no energy signatures at all? That would be primitive, Commander Velthrax said. How would you fight millions of drones with primitive weapons? We would not fight them, sir. We would move through them. The Queen coordinates through psychic awareness of threats. She listens for aggression, fear, noise. If we produce none of those things, we might pass undetected. An older cadet stood up, laughing. You want to walk through a hive of killers and hope they do not see you? That is insane. Actually, a new voice said, it might work. Everyone turned. A human woman in a captain's uniform stood at the back of the hall. She walked forward and Minho recognized the insignia of Earth Defense Fleet. I am Captain Hyuk, military liaison from Earth. I was sent here 3 weeks ago to observe training. She reached the stage and faced the cadets. What Cadet Minho suggests is based on human hunting tactics. We call it persistence hunting. The prey never knows you are following until it is too late. High Admiral Korvesh studied her. You believe this could work against the swarm? I believe it is the only thing that might work, sir. The swarm has adapted to counter every loud species in the galaxy, but they have never encountered something that hunts in complete silence. The briefing continued for another hour. Finally, the Admiral made his decision. We will attempt a silent insertion. 12 volunteers. No technology. Primitive weapons only. Lieutenant Han Yuna will lead. He looked directly at Minho. Cadet Minho, you will serve as insertion specialist. Choose your team. Minho selected carefully. Jiwon volunteered immediately. So did Scar and, surprisingly, Throknar. He chose Baek Sujin, a brilliant human strategist, Cadet Lim Taehyun, a communications specialist, and 6 others who had shown the ability to move quietly. They had 20 hours to prepare. Lieutenant Han Yuna gathered them in a private training room. She was a combat veteran with scars that told stories. Listen carefully. We are going against everything the galaxy believes about warfare. No guns, no energy shields, no radio. We move on foot. We use blades, bows, and our minds. If any of you cannot do this, leave now. No one left. Minho spent the next hours teaching his team the basics of silent movement. Step with your whole foot, not heel first. Control your breathing. Clear your mind of aggressive thoughts. Move with purpose but without urgency. Throknar struggled the most. His species believed in announcing their presence and making the earth shake with their steps. Asking him to move quietly was like asking him to stop breathing. I cannot do this, the Erglian said in frustration. My body is heavy. My footsteps are loud. Weight does not have to be loud, Minho said. He picked up a large rock and set it down gently. No sound, then he dropped it. It crashed against the floor. Same rock. Different intention. You are choosing to be loud because it feels safe. Learn to feel safe in silence. They trained through the night. Jiwon practiced controlled breathing. Sujin developed hand signals for communication. Taehyun worked on moving through obstacles without touching them. The dropships left at dawn. They traveled for 6 hours through hyperspace, emerging in the Theta 7 system. The colony world appeared on their screens, covered in a writhing mass of Zathran drones. Estimate 12 million drones on the surface, the pilot reported. Colony is completely surrounded. Take us down on the dark side, Lieutenant Yuna ordered. Silent approach. The dropship descended without engines, using only gravitational pull and maneuvering thrusters. They landed 10 kilometers from the colony in a rocky wasteland. The team disembarked wearing simple cloth uniforms and carrying weapons that would not have looked out of place 10,000 years ago. Minho led them toward the colony. Within an hour, they encountered their first Zathrun drones. The creatures looked like giant insects made of black metal, each the size of a human torso. They moved in patterns, their movements perfectly synchronized. The team froze. Minho had taught them this too. When predators are near, stillness is better than stealth. 3 drones passed within meters of them. The creature's head swiveled, sensors scanning. But they detected nothing. No heat signatures masked by primitive clothing. No electronic signals from their weapons. No fear sent because the team had learned to control their breathing and remain calm. The drones moved on. Jiwon let out a breath she had been holding. That was too close. That will happen 100 more times before we reach the hostages, Minho whispered. Get used to it. They moved through the drone-infested territory like ghosts. It took 3 days to cover 10 kilometers. They slept in shifts, hidden in rocky outcroppings. They ate cold rations. They communicated only through hand signals. On the 2nd day, Scar nearly gave them away. A drone patrol passed and one creature stopped directly in front of her. Its sensor array extended, scanning the air. Scar's breathing quickened. Fear chemicals began releasing from her skin. Minho moved smoothly to her side. He did not touch her, just positioned himself so she could see him. His own breathing was perfectly calm. His eyes were steady. Without words, he reminded her. Quiet mind, quiet body, no fear. Scar matched her breathing to his. The fear chemicals stopped. The drone scanned once more, found nothing, and moved on. That night, Sujin gathered the team. Using a stick in the dirt, she drew a map of the colony. The hostages are being held in the central habdome. We have 2 problems. First, getting through a kilometer of drones between us and that dome. Second, getting 300 people out through the same gauntlet. We cannot teach 300 people to move silently in the time we have, Taehyun whispered. No, Minho agreed, but we can create chaos. If we free them and send them in multiple directions at once, the Swarm Queen will have to divide her attention. Some will get through. That means leaving people behind, Lieutenant Yuna said quietly. Only if we all leave, Minho said. Someone needs to stay and draw the Queen's focus. The team looked at each other. Everyone understood what he was suggesting. I will stay, Throknar rumbled softly. It was the first time Minho had ever heard the Erglian speak quietly. I am the loudest. I will make the best distraction. You will die, Vexik said. Then I die as a warrior should, drawing enemy attention so others escape. That is glory worth having. Throknar looked at Minho. You taught me that silence is strength. Let me teach you that sometimes noise has purpose too. They reached the central dome at midnight on the third day. The building was surrounded by thousands of drones, their bodies creating a living wall of metal and chitin. The team moved through them like water through stone, finding gaps, using stillness and patience. It took 4 hours to cover the last 100 meters. Inside the dome, they found the hostages, 300 beings of dozens of species, all huddled together in terror. When they saw the rescue team, hope and fear mixed on their faces. Lieutenant Yuna raised her hand for silence before anyone could shout. She moved among the hostages using hand signals. Quiet, follow, trust. Minho divided them into 30 groups of 10, each group assigned a direction to run. Sujin marked escape routes on quickly drawn maps. Taehyun positioned himself to lead one group, Jiwon another. At 0400 they were ready. Throknar stood at the dome's main entrance. He looked back at Minho one final time. Thank you, Ghost, for teaching me what strength really means. Then he charged through the entrance and his war cry shook the entire colony. Throknar's war cry echoed across the colony. Every Zathran drone within a kilometer turned toward the sound. The Urglian charged forward, and for the first time since Minho had met him, that loudness served a purpose. Now, Lieutenant Yuna commanded. 30 groups of hostages burst from the dome in different directions. The Swarm Queen's consciousness tried to track them all at once, but her coordination fractured. Drones scattered, uncertain which target to pursue. Minho led his group through the chaos. 10 frightened cadets followed him, trusting this quiet human to guide them through millions of killers. He moved with the same calm he always showed, and that calm spread to those behind him. A drone appeared directly in their path. Before it could alert the others, Minho's blade found the creature's control node. It fell without making a sound. He kept moving. Behind them, Throknar was a thunderstorm. The big Urglian fought with all the noise and fury his species was known for. Drones swarmed him, but that was exactly what he wanted. Every drone focused on him was one less hunting the escaping hostages. Minho's group reached the rocky wasteland. He turned back to see the colony. Somewhere in that mass of enemies, Throknar still fought. Then the noise stopped. We need to keep moving, Jiwon said quietly, appearing with her own group. She had tears on her face. I know, Minho said. Over the next 6 hours, the escape groups made their way to designated pickup points. Transport ships swooped in to collect them. 27 groups made it out. 3 groups were captured or killed. 263 hostages survived. Throknar did not. The rescue became famous across the galactic unity within days. Analysts could not believe that such a primitive tactic had worked against the swarm. Military leaders studied the mission recordings obsessively. How had 12 cadets and 1 lieutenant moved through millions of drones undetected? Minho sat alone in the memorial garden, staring at Throknar's name carved into stone. Around him, the station buzzed with excited chatter about the mission. He heard none of it. He died well, a voice said. Minho looked up. Commander Velthrak stood over him, blocking out the light. He died being loud, Minho said, after I spent so much time teaching him to be quiet. He died using noise as a weapon, the commander corrected. That is different from being loud because you know no other way. He learned silence first. That made his noise meaningful. Minho had not thought of it that way. The commander sat down on the stone bench. The structure groaned but held. The Council of Roars has requested your presence. They wish to understand what happened at Theta 7. 3 days later, Minho stood in the Grand Council chamber. Representatives from 1,000 worlds filled the curved rows of seats. At the center sat the Council of Roars, 12 of the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy. Minho had never felt smaller, but he kept his voice steady and quiet as he recounted the mission. When he finished, the council erupted in debate. Arguments flew in hundreds of languages. Finally, a massive Krethian admiral named Ravthok called for silence. I do not understand, the admiral said, his voice like grinding rocks. You had no weapons worth mentioning. You faced millions of enemies, yet you succeeded. Explain to me how weakness achieved victory. Minho looked up at the admiral. Permission to ask you a question, sir? Granted. What is the most dangerous predator on your homeworld? The admiral seemed surprised. The razor wing. It hunts from above and strikes with talons that can pierce armor. Does the razor wing announce itself before it strikes? No. It is silent. Then it is not weakness that won at Theta 7, sir. It is the oldest form of strength, the strength that every apex predator understands, the strength of striking from silence. Ambassador Choi Min-jae, Earth's representative to the Council, stood. The galactic unity was built by warrior species. Species that evolved to fight with volume and displays of power. That works when everyone fights the same way. But the Zathrun swarm has adapted to counter loud warfare. They detect energy, noise, aggression. They have never faced an enemy that produces none of those things. You call this a strategy? Another council member demanded. To hide, to skulk? We call it hunting, Ambassador Choi said. Before humans had any technology, we were already the most dangerous predators on our planet. Not because we were strong, but because we were patient. We tracked prey for days across deserts and plains. We followed herds until they collapsed from exhaustion. We learned to move without sound. Think without broadcasting intent, kill without warning. That is what you saw at Theta 7. Humans doing what we have always done best. Dr. Shin Hana, a human xenobiologist, presented her research next. She displayed scans of the Zathrun swarm's psychic network. The Queen coordinates through constant mental communication, she explained. Imagine conducting an orchestra with 10 million musicians. Every thought, every command, every response creates psychic noise. The Queen has evolved to process this noise perfectly. She changed the display to show Minho's brain scan. But here's where it gets interesting. Human brains produce almost no psychic noise. We evolved using internal thought, rather than telepathic communication. To the Swarm Queen, we are like gaps in her orchestra, spaces where nothing plays. And when her coordination depends on detecting everything, those gaps are devastating. Fleet Admiral Ravthok studied the scans. You are saying humans are invisible to the Swarm? Not invisible, sir. Just very, very quiet. Quiet enough that 12 of them could move through the Queen's domain without triggering her defensive responses. The Council talked for hours. Some members were convinced. Others remained skeptical. Finally, High Admiral Corvish made an announcement. The Zathrun Swarm Queen has declared revenge against humanity. For the humiliation at Theta 7, she is gathering her forces for an assault on Earth's colonies. He paused. We have 6 weeks to prepare a defense. Traditional warfare will fail. Does anyone have an alternative? Minho raised his hand again. The Council turned to look at this quiet cadet who had already changed their understanding of warfare. Yes, Cadet Minho? Teach them silence, Minho said. Take volunteers from every species. Teach them to move quietly, think quietly, fight quietly. The Swarm Queen expects loud enemies. Give her nothing to hear. This is madness, one council member shouted. You would have warriors of proud species crawl like insects? I would have them hunt like predators, Minho corrected. There is no shame in silence, only efficiency. The debate continued, but Admiral Ravthok had heard enough. I have commanded fleets for 60 years. I have conquered worlds. But I watched the recordings of Theta 7 a dozen times. He looked directly at Minho. 12 cadets infiltrated territory held by millions without detection. That is not weakness. That is apex predation. He turned to the Council. I support this proposal. Other military leaders began to agree. Within days, the Silent Strike Initiative was approved. Volunteers from across the galaxy arrived at the academy to learn what humans had always known. Minho became an instructor overnight. He taught species with natural sonar to mute it. He taught species with bioluminescence to dim their glow. He taught warriors who had spent lifetimes roaring to embrace stillness. It was brutally difficult. Most students failed, but some succeeded. They learned that power does not require volume, that danger does not need to announce itself, that the most effective warriors are the ones their enemies never see coming. Scar became one of the best students. Jiwon developed training methods specifically for telepathic species. Even Vexik, with her clicking blade limbs, learned to move without sound. 6 weeks passed quickly. Intelligence reports showed the swarm gathering near Proxima, Earth's first colony world. The Queen brought 100 million drones. It was the largest concentration of swarm forces ever recorded. The galaxy watched and waited. Traditional military theory said Proxima would fall within hours. But Proxima was not planning a traditional defense. Minho stood in the command center alongside Admiral Ravthok and Ambassador Choi. On the screens, the swarm approached. They come with numbers and noise, the Admiral observed. How do we respond? Minho's answer was almost a whisper. We show them that numbers mean nothing when you cannot find your enemy. We show them that noise is weakness when your opponent refuses to make a sound. We show them that galaxies do not tremble from roars. They tremble from what waits in the silence between stars. The Admiral smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had finally understood what made something truly dangerous. Begin the operation, he ordered, and across Proxima Colony, 50,000 silent strike operatives prepared to show the galaxy what humans had always known. The most dangerous thing in the universe is not the monster that roars. It is the hunter you never hear approaching. The Zathrun swarm descended on Proxima Colony like a dark storm. 100 million drones filled the sky, blotting out the sun. Their chittering created a sound like a machine breaking. The Swarm Queen's consciousness pulsed through them all, coordinating the attack with perfect precision. On the ground, Proxima appeared deserted. The 20 million colonists had evacuated to underground shelters designed with acoustic dampening and psychic shielding. The streets were empty. Buildings stood silent. No lights, no power signatures, no electromagnetic signals. The swarm landed unopposed. Drones filled every street, every building, every open space. The Queen expected resistance. She expected fear. She had fed on both for millions of years across countless worlds. Instead, she found nothing. Her consciousness spread through the colony, searching for the familiar psychic noise of frightened prey. She found only silence. Something felt wrong. Then the trap activated. From sewers, from buildings, from underground passages, 50,000 silent strike operatives emerged. They moved like shadows, making no sound. Most were human, but among them were Erglians who had learned to walk without shaking the earth, Krillians whose blade limbs no longer clicked, Gorthians who had mastered the art of killing without roaring. They struck the swarm from 1,000 directions at once. Minho led his team through a sector packed with drones. He moved between them like water flowing around stones. His blade found vulnerable points on drone after drone. No wasted movement, no sound, just efficiency. Behind him, Jiwan, Sujin, and Taihyun moved with the same trained silence. They had become what the galaxy thought impossible. Warriors who killed without announcing their presence. The Swarm Queen tried to coordinate a response, but her drones could not locate targets that produced no signature. They fired at empty spaces. They clustered together for security, making themselves vulnerable to precisely placed strikes. The Queen's perfect coordination began to fracture. She had never experienced confusion before. She was a consciousness that controlled millions. How could 12,000 enemies become invisible among her millions of drones? On the third day of fighting, the swarm's numbers had dropped to 80 million. The silent strike operatives had lost only 300. The mathematics did not make sense. The weak were defeating the strong. In orbit, Admiral Ravthok watched the battle unfold. This should not be possible, he said, though his voice held satisfaction rather than doubt. It is possible because the Swarm Queen has no experience with silence, Ambassador Choi explained. Every species she ever consumed was loud. They fought with energy weapons, with battle cries, with electromagnetic signatures. She adapted to counter all of that, but she never adapted to counter something that makes no noise at all. Humanity did not invent new weapons, Captain Hayek added. We remembered old ones. Before technology, we were already apex predators. We just forgot for a while. On the colony surface, Minho's team had penetrated deep into swarm territory. Their target was the Queen's primary host body. Intelligence said she had taken physical form in the colony's central plaza, a massive organic structure pulsing with psychic energy. They reached the plaza at dawn of the fourth day. The Queen's body was enormous, a mountain of living tissue surrounded by 10,000 elite guard drones. These were her finest warriors, stronger and faster than regular drones. Sujin studied the defenses. We cannot fight through 10,000 guards. We do not need to fight them, Minho said quietly. We just need to confuse them. He sent Jiwan and Taehyun to create diversions at opposite ends of the plaza. When the diversions activated, guard drones split their attention. In that moment of confusion, Minho moved forward with Sujin. They crossed 100 meters of open ground in perfect silence. Guard drones passed within touching distance, but the drones detected nothing. No fear scent. No psychic noise. No energy signature. Just two humans moving with absolute calm and purpose. They reached the base of the Queen's body. Up close it was terrifying. Flesh and technology merged into something beyond either. The surface pulsed with bioluminescence. Psychic energy radiated from it in waves. The Swarm Queen's consciousness focused on them suddenly. Her voice filled their minds, and it was like standing in a hurricane. Impossible. I am millions. I am legend. I am the noise that drowns all thought. What are you? Minho looked up at this being that controlled 100 million bodies. He felt her power trying to overwhelm his mind with psychic pressure. She was old, powerful, and had consumed thousands of species. But she had never encountered something like him. His mind remained still. Not blocked, not shielded, but simply calm, like a lake with no wind. Her psychic pressure found nothing to push against. You are wrong, he said quietly. You are not millions. You are one mind shouting into the void. You fill silence with noise because silence terrifies you. You need to hear yourself think. You need to feel your presence confirmed by the chaos you create. He took a step closer. The guard drone still had not detected him. But silence was here before you. Silence is the natural state of the universe. Everything else is just temporary noise. The Queen tried to crush his mind with pure psychic force. Sujin gasped and fell to her knees beside him. But Minho remained standing, his consciousness refusing to break. You cannot understand me, the Queen's voice boomed. I am chaos. I am noise! I am everything. No, Minho said. You are afraid. Afraid of what exists in the quiet. Afraid of predators that do not announce themselves. Afraid of death that comes without warning. He struck. Not with supernatural speed or strength. He was still just human. But he moved with absolute commitment, zero hesitation and complete presence. His blade found the biological nexus that anchored the Queen to this plane of reality. The Queen's death scream echoed psychically across the entire star system. Every being with telepathic sensitivity felt it. A consciousness that had existed for millions of years, that had consumed thousands of species, that had believed itself eternal, suddenly understood what it meant to end. 100 million drones collapsed simultaneously. Their unifying intelligence was gone. They fell like puppets with cut strings. The battle was over. Minho helped Sujin to her feet. Around them, the colony was silent. Not the forced silence of hiding, but the natural silence of peace. Ji-won and Taehyun found them an hour later. Ji-won threw her arms around Minho, crying and laughing at the same time. We won. We actually won. We survived, Minho corrected gently. That is what humans do best. The victory celebration across the galactic unity lasted for weeks. Every species honored the silent strike operatives. Minho received more medals than he could count. High Admiral Corvesh personally promoted him to commander. But Minho avoided the celebrations. He spent his time in the memorial garden, looking at Throcknar's name carved in stone. The big Erglian had taught him something important. Silence and noise both had their place. The key was knowing when to use each. Admiral Ravthok found him there one evening. You hide from your own victory, the Admiral observed. I do not hide, sir. I just prefer quiet, the Admiral sat down. The Council of Roars wants to make silent strike doctrine standard training for all military forces. They want you to lead the program. With respect, sir, that seems excessive, is it? The Admiral gestured toward the stars. In 1 week, you and your operatives defeated an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. You did it without superweapons, without advanced technology. You did it by remembering something the galaxy forgot. The most dangerous predator is not the loudest one. Minho was quiet for a long moment. What do you want me to say, sir? I want you to understand what you have done. You have changed warfare itself. Every species in the galactic unity is now learning that volume is not strength. That silence can be a weapon. That patience defeats aggression. The Admiral stood. You made the galaxy rethink everything it believed about power. After the Admiral left, Ji-won joined Minho in the garden. They want to throw you a parade, she said. I know. You should go. You are a hero. I am a human who did what humans have always done. There is no special glory in that. Ji-won sat beside him. Remember when we first met? You told me humans were persistence hunters, that we tracked prey for days without rest, that we never announced ourselves. I did not really understand what you meant. And now I understand that you were not talking about ancient history. You were talking about yourself, about what you were going to become. She looked at him. You hunted the Swarm Queen for weeks. You tracked her across a colony filled with her drones. You moved through her territory without making a sound. And when you finally struck, she never saw you coming. Minho smiled slightly. My grandfather would be proud. More than proud. You proved that humans are exactly what he said we were. The patient ones. The quiet ones. The ones who wait in silence until the perfect moment. Years passed. Commander Kang Minho became the youngest instructor general in Galactic Unity history. Under his guidance, silent strike doctrines spread across the galaxy. Species that had spent millennia valuing volume learned to value stillness instead. The academy changed. Training now emphasized patience over aggression, awareness over display. Cadets learned that the most